The champagne flutes glisten under Detroit's skyline as Margaret Whitmore steps into the spotlight. At 62, she commands the room like a queen surveying her kingdom. Tonight isn't just another product launch. It's the culmination of 30 years building an automotive empire from the ground up. The new luxury sedan gleams under the showroom lights, chrome reflecting the faces of Detroit's elite. Margaret adjusts her pearl necklace, a gesture that's become her trademark before every major announcement. She built Whitmore Motors from a single dealership into a billion-dollar corporation, and tonight, she's unveiling the car that will cement their legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, her voice cuts through the murmur of 300 guests. Tonight, we don't just launch a vehicle, we launch the future. The crowd erupts in applause, but Margaret's eyes scan the room with the precision of a hawk. She spots Daniel, her 24-year-old son, near the engineering team. His gentle smile reminds her why she's fought so hard. Not just for profit, but for family. He's everything she hoped for in an heir. Brilliant, compassionate, untainted by the ruthless world of corporate politics. Behind Daniel stands Marcus, her 36-year-old stepson, impeccably dressed as always. The vice president position suits him well, though she sometimes catches shadows in his eyes that remind her too much of his father, her second husband who tried to steal her company in their bitter divorce. As the presentation concludes to thunderous applause, Margaret retreats backstage to collect herself. The adrenaline of performance always leaves her drained, needing those quiet moments to transition from CEO to human being. That's when she sees it. A phone, face up under the VIP table, where only family and top executives had been seated. The screen glows with an unread message, and something compels her to look closer. Add a few drops to the second son's glass of water. The words hit her like ice water in her veins. Her breath catches, and for a moment, the powerful Margaret Whitmore feels like a terrified mother. Second son, Daniel. Someone wants to poison her baby boy. Her hands tremble as she picks up the device, her mind racing through possibilities. This isn't random. This is calculated, precise, personal. Someone in her inner circle, someone with access to the VIP area, is planning to murder her son. Margaret's fingers move swiftly across the phone, checking recent messages, contacts, anything that might reveal the owner. Her heart pounds as she recognizes the number pattern. A company phone. One of her own people is behind this. The champagne reception continues just beyond the curtain, laughter and conversation floating through the air like nothing has changed. But everything has changed. Her family is under attack, and she needs to think fast. She spots Daniel across the room, accepting congratulations from the engineering team, completely unaware that someone wants him dead. The urge to rush to him, to grab him and flee, nearly overwhelms her maternal instincts. But Margaret didn't build an empire by acting on impulse. She forces herself to breathe, to think like the CEO she is. Evidence. She needs evidence before she can act. One misplaced phone isn't enough. She needs to know who, why, and how deep this conspiracy runs. Her mind catalogs everyone who had access to the VIP area tonight. Board members, senior executives, family. The list is smaller than she'd like, which means the betrayal runs deeper than a random enemy. Margaret slips the phone into her purse and returns to the reception, her smile perfectly composed despite the storm raging inside. She approaches Daniel, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "Mom, the presentation was incredible," Daniel beams, his genuine pride warming her heart even in this moment of terror. "Thank you, sweetheart," she manages, her voice steady despite everything. "I'm proud of the work you've done on the hybrid system." As they talk, Margaret's eyes sweep the room, studying faces with new intensity. Someone here wants her son dead. Someone she trusts. Someone she's welcomed into her professional family is planning murder. Marcus approaches, champagne in hand, his smile as polished as his reputation. "Congratulations, Margaret. Another triumph for the Whitmore name." She studies his face, searching for tells, for anything that might reveal guilt or innocence. But Marcus has always been hard to read. a quality that served him well in negotiations but now makes him suspect. The success belongs to the whole team, Margaret replies carefully, watching his reaction. Family and loyalty, that's what built this company. Something flickers in Marcus's eyes, but before she can analyze it, her assistant approaches. Victoria Sterling, 28, brilliant, ambitious. Margaret hired her 2 years ago, impressed by her Harvard MBA and hunger for success. Mrs. Whitmore, the press wants a few more quotes about the launch, Victoria says, her tablet ready. Margaret nods, but as Victoria turns away, something catches her attention. The young woman's purse, slightly open, revealing the corner of what looks like a phone charger, the same type of charger for the phone now hidden in Margaret's purse. The pieces begin falling into place with terrifying clarity. Victoria has access to everything: schedules, meetings, family information. She knows Daniel's routines, his favorite restaurants, his habits. And she's been working closely with Marcus on several high-profile projects. Margaret excuses herself and steps into the ladies' room, pulling out the mysterious phone. With shaking fingers, she scrolls through recent contacts and messages. What she finds makes her blood run cold. Margaret's hands shake as she scrolls through the phone's messages, each revelation hitting her like a physical blow. Text after text reveals a conspiracy more twisted than she could have imagined. Her own secretary, Victoria Sterling, isn't just planning murder. She's orchestrating the complete destruction of the Whitmore family. The bathroom mirror reflects a woman she barely recognizes. The composed CEO facade crumbles as the weight of betrayal crushes down on her shoulders. Victoria has been in her home, at family dinners, privy to their most intimate moments. She's watched Daniel grow into the man he's become, all while planning his death. But the worst revelation is yet to come. Margaret finds a series of intimate photos and messages that make her stomach turn. Victoria and Marcus, her stepson, locked in passionate embraces. Hotel receipts, romantic dinners, weekend getaways, all hidden behind professional smiles and boardroom presentations. "My darling Marcus," one message reads, "once Daniel is gone, you'll be the only heir. We can finally be together openly, and I'll stand beside you as we run this empire." The phone nearly slips from Margaret's trembling fingers. Her stepson, the boy she raised after marrying his father, the young man she mentored and promoted to vice president, is part of this deadly conspiracy. Another message stops her cold. "The drops are tasteless, odorless. Add them to his water during the toast. Natural causes, they'll think. Stress from the promotion." Margaret's maternal instincts scream at her to run, to grab Daniel, and flee into the night. But 30 years of business warfare have taught her something more valuable than panic. Patience and precision win battles. She photographs every message, every incriminating detail, building her case with the methodical focus that made her a billionaire. Evidence first, emotions later. That's how you destroy enemies. Returning to the reception, Margaret forces herself to smile, to play the gracious hostess while her world burns around her. She watches Victoria move through the crowd like a predator, charming guests and board members with practiced ease. The young woman approaches Daniel with a champagne flute, her smile radiant and deadly. "Mr. Whitmore, your mother asked me to bring you this. She wants to make a special toast to the family." Margaret's blood freezes. This is it, the moment Victoria planned to execute her son. Without hesitation, Margaret strides across the room, her heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots. "Victoria," Margaret's voice cuts through the ambient noise, "I need to speak with you privately. Now." The secretary's face flickers, just for an instant, with something that might be panic before the mask slides back into place. "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore, let me just—" "Now." Margaret's tone brokers no argument. She leads Victoria to her private office, her mind calculating every move. Behind them, she hears Daniel setting down the untouched champagne, completely unaware of how close he came to death. In the office, Margaret closes the door and activates the white noise system she uses for sensitive negotiations. What she's about to do requires absolute privacy. I found your phone, Victoria. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Victoria's composure finally cracks, her polished facade crumbling to reveal something cold and desperate underneath. I don't know what you're talking about, Victoria tries, but her voice wavers. Margaret places the phone on her desk, the incriminating messages displayed like evidence in a courtroom. Add a few drops to the second son's glass of water. Your words, Victoria. Your plan to murder my child. The young woman's face transforms completely, the mask of loyalty and professionalism melting away to reveal pure venom. You have no idea what it's like, do you? Watching you hand everything to that naive little boy while people with real ambition get scraps. So, you decided to kill him. Margaret's voice is eerily calm, the tone she uses when demolishing competitors. Daniel doesn't deserve what you've given him, Victoria snarls. Marcus has worked twice as hard, sacrificed twice as much. He deserves to inherit this empire, not some spoiled little prince who's never had to fight for anything. Margaret studies the woman she once trusted with her schedule, her confidential files, her family's security. And you thought you could manipulate Marcus, use him to control my company after Daniel was dead. Victoria's laugh is bitter and sharp. Marcus loves me. He'll do anything I ask because I'm the first person who's ever seen his true potential. Together, we would have made this company something extraordinary. Together, you planned murder. Margaret moves to her safe, withdrawing a digital recorder that's been capturing every word. Corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and manipulation of a company officer. The FBI will be very interested in this conversation. The color drains from Victoria's face as the reality of her situation crashes down. You can't prove anything. It's just text messages. I could claim the phone was stolen, that someone else sent them. Margaret's smile is razor-sharp and completely without warmth. Victoria, I didn't build a billion-dollar empire by being careless. I have security footage, financial records of your hotel stays with Marcus, and now a recorded confession. You just told me you planned to murder my son because you thought he didn't deserve his inheritance. The young woman slumps into the chair, her ambitious dreams collapsing around her like a house of cards. What do you want? Justice, Margaret replies simply. And the complete destruction of anyone who threatens my family. She presses the intercom button, her voice steady and commanding. Security to my office immediately. And call Detective Morrison. Tell him I have evidence of a conspiracy to commit murder. As footsteps approach in the hallway, Margaret looks at the woman who nearly destroyed everything she'd built. In Victoria's eyes, she sees her own ambition twisted into something monstrous. A reminder of how power without principles becomes poison. The door opens, and Margaret Whitmore prepares to do what she's always done best. Protect her family and her empire, no matter the cost. The elevator rises 43 floors to Margaret's corner office, each floor marking another year of her climb to power. Detroit's skyline spreads before her like a kingdom she's conquered inch by bloody inch. The city lights reflect in the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting shadows that dance across her face like flames. Security has Victoria in custody downstairs, but Margaret's real battle is just beginning. She pours herself 2 fingers of bourbon, the same brand she drank the night she signed her first $1 million deal. Tonight, she needs that same steel in her veins. Her reflection stares back from the darkened window. A 62-year-old woman who spent 4 decades fighting wars that men said she couldn't win. The girl who started as a file clerk in 1983 is gone. What remains is a warrior forged in corporate fire. Margaret closes her eyes and lets the memories flood back. 22 years old, pregnant with Daniel, standing in the same building when it belonged to someone else. The receptionist had looked at her belly with disgust, telling her they didn't hire girls in her condition. She remembers the night she mortgaged everything to buy her first dealership. Her first husband called her crazy, said no bank would lend to a woman with a baby. But Margaret knew something he didn't. Desperation makes you dangerous, and dangerous women change the world. The phone buzzes, jarring her from the past. Mrs. Whitmore, Her head of security's voice crackles through the speaker. Detective Morrison is here. Victoria Sterling is requesting a lawyer. Let her request whatever she wants, Margaret replies, her voice cold as Detroit winter. Make sure the media knows we're cooperating fully with law enforcement. I want this story to break exactly how I tell it. She walks to her desk, opening the file that contains 30 years of strategic warfare. Every hostile takeover, every boardroom coup, every competitor she's destroyed, they all led to this moment. Protecting her family isn't just personal anymore. It's about sending a message to anyone who thinks the Whitmore empire shows weakness. Margaret picks up her secure line and dials a number she hasn't used in years. Tom, it's Margaret Whitmore. I need you to call in every favor you owe me. I want the full story. Victoria Sterling, attempted murder, corporate conspiracy, on every major network by morning. The voice on the other end chuckles. Margaret, you always did know how to create a spectacle. What's the angle? The angle is that someone tried to poison my son to steal my company, and I'm going to destroy them so completely that no one will ever dare threaten a Whitmore again. Her words carry the weight of absolute conviction. As she speaks, Margaret's eyes fall on a framed photo from Daniel's college graduation. His smile is so much like her father's. Gentle, trusting, believing in the goodness of people. That innocence is what she's fighting to protect. But there's another photo on her desk that makes her chest tighten. Marcus at 21, the day she promoted him to junior executive. She'd been so proud, telling everyone how brilliant her stepson was becoming. The betrayal cuts deeper than any corporate backstabbing ever could. Her assistant knocks, the night shift replacement who doesn't know that her predecessor is sitting in a jail cell. Mrs. Whitmore, your stepson Marcus is requesting an urgent meeting. He says it's about the Victoria Sterling situation. Margaret's smile could freeze blood. Tell Marcus I'll see him in conference room A, and activate the recording system. I want everything documented. 20 minutes later, Marcus enters the conference room, his usual confidence replaced by something that looks suspiciously like fear. He's changed from his elegant suit into jeans and a sweater, as if casual clothes could make him seem less guilty. Margaret, I heard about Victoria. This is insane. She must have lost her mind. His voice carries just the right amount of shock and concern, but Margaret has been reading people for 40 years. She places the phone on the table between them, Victoria's messages still displayed on the screen. Marcus, I've always admired your intelligence. Please don't insult mine by pretending you don't know why you're here. The color drains from his face as he reads the intimate messages, the hotel receipts, the detailed plans to eliminate Daniel. His hands shake as the full scope of his exposure becomes clear. I never wanted Daniel hurt, he whispers, his voice breaking. Victoria said we could convince you to make me the primary heir without anyone getting hurt. She said Daniel wasn't suited for this business anyway. Margaret's laugh is sharp and humorless. So you decided to let her murder him instead. Much more humane. I didn't know about the poison until tonight. I swear. Marcus looks up with desperate eyes. When I found out, I was going to stop her. I was looking for you when security took her away. Marcus, you're 36 years old. You've been my stepson for 22 years. I raised you, mentored you, gave you everything. Margaret's voice carries a mother's pain beneath the executive's steel. And you repaid me by conspiring to kill my child. The silence stretches between them like a chasm. Outside, Detroit continues its nightly rhythm, unaware that the Whitmore family is tearing itself apart 43 floors above the streets. I loved her, Marcus finally admits, his voice barely audible. Victoria made me believe I deserved more than being second to Daniel. She said you'd never see my worth as long as he was alive. Margaret stands, walking to the window that overlooks the city she's conquered. Love doesn't excuse murder, Marcus. And ambition without honor isn't worth anything. She turns back to face the young man she once considered a son. You have two choices. Resign immediately, disappear from Detroit, and never contact this family again. Or I destroy you the same way I'm going to destroy Victoria. Publicly, completely, and permanently. Marcus stares at her, seeing perhaps for the first time the full power of the woman who built an empire from nothing. In her eyes, he finds no mercy, no second chances, no maternal forgiveness. "I'll have my resignation on your desk in the morning," he whispers. At 6 a.m., Margaret's voice echoes through Whitmore Motors headquarters like a battle cry. Emergency press conference. Boardroom 3. Every major network, every automotive journalist, every business reporter in Detroit. I want them here in 2 hours. Her communications director looks stunned. "Mrs. Whitmore, what's the story? We need talking points, prepared statements." "The story," Margaret interrupts, her eyes blazing with controlled fury, "is attempted murder. And the only talking point you need is this: nobody threatens a Whitmore and lives to tell about it." By 8 a.m., Boardroom 3 buzzes with energy that could power the entire building. Cameras from CNN, Fox Business, and local Detroit stations create a forest of lenses pointed at the empty podium. Reporters whisper theories while adjusting their microphones, sensing that something massive is about to break. Margaret enters wearing her signature black power suit, the one she wore the day she hostile takeovered her biggest competitor. Behind her walks Daniel, confused but trusting, and security personnel flanking Victoria Sterling in handcuffs. The room falls silent as Margaret approaches the podium. Behind her, a massive screen displays the Whitmore Motors logo, but everyone knows this isn't about cars anymore. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," Margaret begins, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's never lost a public battle. "At approximately 10:30 last night, during our product launch celebration, I discovered evidence of a conspiracy to murder my son and steal control of this corporation." The room erupts. Cameras flash like lightning. Reporters lean forward in their seats, and the energy shifts from corporate curiosity to criminal fascination. This is the story that will dominate headlines for weeks. Margaret raises her hand, and silence returns instantly. "Victoria Sterling, my former executive assistant, conspired with my stepson, Marcus Whitmore, to poison Daniel Whitmore with the intent of eliminating him as heir to this company." She nods to her security chief, who activates the massive screen behind her. The Whitmore logo fades, replaced by crystal-clear security footage from the previous evening. The first clip shows Victoria whispering urgently with Marcus near the bar, their body language intimate and conspiratorial. The timestamp reads 9:47 p.m., just minutes before Margaret found the phone. This footage shows Miss Sterling coordinating with Marcus Whitmore, who until this morning held the position of vice president. Note the time. This conversation occurred immediately before the planned execution of their murder plot. Gasps ripple through the room as the next clip plays. Victoria approaches the bartender, slipping him something small, a vial that glints under the party lights. The bartender nods and begins preparing drinks, but his hands shake noticeably. Here we see Miss Sterling providing what we believe to be poison to the catering staff. Laboratory analysis of the substance she provided is ongoing, but preliminary tests suggest a compound that would cause cardiac arrest in a healthy 24-year-old man. Margaret's voice never wavers, each word delivered with prosecutorial precision. She's not just revealing a crime, she's building a case that will destroy her enemies completely. The final clip shows Victoria approaching Daniel with a champagne flute, her smile radiant and deadly. The camera captures her lips moving, and Margaret provides the translation. In this moment, Miss Sterling is offering my son what she believed would be his final drink. She told him, and I quote from lip-reading analysis, "Your mother asked me to bring you this for a special family toast." Daniel, sitting in the front row, goes pale as he watches his near-death play out in high definition. His hand instinctively moves to his throat, imagining what might have been. But Margaret isn't finished. She reaches into her briefcase and withdraws Victoria's phone, holding it up like a prosecutor presenting murder weapon evidence. This device, accidentally left behind by Miss Sterling, contains the smoking gun. Text messages detailing the murder plot, financial records showing payments to the catering staff, and most damning of all, this message sent at 9:52 p.m. last night. The phone screen appears on the giant display, Victoria's message blazing in stark black letters. Add a few drops to the second son's glass of water. The room explodes into chaos. Reporters shout questions, cameras click frantically, and Victoria Sterling finally breaks. Her composed facade crumbles as she realizes her life is being destroyed in real time, broadcast to millions. "That's not my phone!" Victoria screams from her chair, fighting against the handcuffs. "She's framing me! This is all lies!" Margaret's smile could cut glass. "Miss Sterling, your fingerprints are on this device. Your DNA is on the vial you gave the bartender. And your voice is on the security recordings planning this murder with my stepson." She turns back to the cameras, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper that somehow carries to every corner of the room. "Victoria Sterling believed she could manipulate my family, steal my company, and murder my child. She was wrong." The press conference erupts again as Margaret drops the final bomb. Effective immediately, Victoria Sterling is terminated from Whitmore Motors and banned from all company properties. Criminal charges for attempted murder, conspiracy, and corporate espionage have been filed with the Wayne County District Attorney. She pauses, letting the weight of destruction settle over the room. Marcus Whitmore has submitted his resignation and will face separate legal proceedings. As for Whitmore Motors, we will emerge from this stronger than ever. Margaret's eyes find Daniel in the crowd, and for just a moment, the fierce CEO becomes a protective mother. "My son, Daniel Whitmore, who would have been murdered by these conspirators, is hereby promoted to Vice President of Engineering and confirmed as my successor." The room goes wild as Daniel stands, his face a mixture of shock, pride, and gratitude. Margaret has turned his near death into his coronation, spinning attempted murder into corporate triumph. "This company was built on family loyalty and will continue under family leadership," Margaret declares, her voice rising above the chaos. "Anyone who threatens the Whitmore family will face the full consequences of their actions." As she walks away from the podium, Victoria's screams echo behind her. Reporters surge forward with questions, and camera flashes create a strobe light symphony of destruction. Margaret Whitmore has just executed the most brutal corporate takedown in Detroit history, and she hasn't even broken a sweat. The press conference aftermath hits the Whitmore family like shrapnel from an explosion. Within hours, Margaret's phone buzzes with missed calls. 37 from Marcus, each more desperate than the last. She deletes them without listening to a single voicemail. But it's the silence from Daniel that cuts deepest. Her son sits in his new corner office, staring at the nameplate that reads, Vice President of Engineering, like it's written in a foreign language. The promotion he dreamed of for years now feels tainted, earned not through merit but through someone else's attempt to murder him. Margaret finds him there at 8 p.m., the building empty except for security and the ghosts of corporate warfare. "Daniel, we need to talk." He doesn't look up from the city lights stretching beyond his window. "Do we, Mom? Or are you going to handle this conversation the same way you handled everything else, without asking what I wanted?" The words hit Margaret like physical blows. In saving her son's life, she's somehow lost his trust. "Daniel, someone tried to kill you. I did what any mother would do." "No." Daniel finally turns, and Margaret sees something in his eyes she's never seen before. Disappointment in her. "A mother would have warned me, protected me, maybe even called the police. A CEO destroys people on live television." The distinction stings because it's true. Margaret built her empire by being ruthless, and now that ruthlessness is poisoning the very family she fought to protect. "You want to know the worst part?" Daniel continues, his voice breaking. "I'm grateful you saved my life, and I hate myself for resenting how you did it. I feel like a child who can't take care of himself." Margaret reaches for him, but he steps back. "You made me look weak, Mom. Like I needed Mommy to fight my battles while I stood there clueless, almost drinking poison." 3 floors down, Marcus storms through the security checkpoint like a man possessed. The guards, unsure how to handle a disgraced former executive, let him pass with nervous glances. He bursts into Margaret's office without knocking, his face a mask of rage and desperation. You destroyed everything, Margaret. Everything we built, everything we were as a family. Margaret looks up from the legal documents she's been reviewing. Victoria's criminal charges, civil suits, restraining orders. The machinery of destruction requires paperwork. Marcus, you lost the right to call us family when you conspired to murder Daniel. I loved her, Marcus shouts, his composure finally shattering completely. For the first time in my life, someone saw me as more than just your stepson, more than Daniel's shadow. Victoria believed in me. Victoria used you, Margaret replies coldly. She manipulated your feelings to commit murder. That's not love. That's psychological warfare. Marcus slams his hands on the desk, making the crystal awards jump. You never gave me a real chance. It was always Daniel this, Daniel that. Your precious biological son who could do no wrong. The accusation hangs in the air like poison gas. Margaret has heard it before, whispered in boardrooms and family gatherings, but never said to her face with such venom. I raised you, Marcus. I loved you like my own child. Her voice cracks slightly, showing the first sign of vulnerability she's displayed all day. No, you tolerated me. There's a difference. Marcus's eyes fill with tears he refuses to shed. And when someone finally saw my worth, you destroyed her to protect your real son. He turns to leave, then stops at the door. Victoria was right about one thing. Daniel doesn't deserve what you've handed him, but neither do I. Neither do any of us. The door slams, leaving Margaret alone with the wreckage of her family. That evening, Margaret sits at the head of her dining room table, the same mahogany surface where she's hosted board dinners and celebrated company victories. Tonight, it feels like a battlefield. Daniel sits to her right, picking at his salmon without appetite. The chair where Marcus used to sit remains empty, a ghost at their family meal. The silence stretches like a wound that won't heal. I've arranged for additional security, Margaret says, trying to fill the void with practicalities. The FBI thinks there might be other conspirators we haven't identified. Daniel nods without looking up. More people who want to hurt me because of what I represent to you. The words cut because they're probably true. Being Margaret Whitmore's heir makes Daniel a target, and they both know it. Her success has painted a bullseye on everyone she loves. I've also contacted a private investigator to look into Victoria's background, Margaret continues. We need to know if this goes deeper than corporate espionage. Mom, Daniel finally meets her eyes. Can we just eat dinner? Can we just be a family for 5 minutes without talking about assassination plots and corporate warfare? Margaret nods, but the silence that follows feels more oppressive than the conversation. They eat like strangers, the weight of unspoken resentments heavy between them. After Daniel leaves for his apartment downtown, Margaret sits alone at the massive table, surrounded by empty chairs and the echoes of better times. The house feels cavernous, filled with ghosts of family dinners when Marcus would argue politics and Daniel would share engineering breakthroughs. She pours herself another glass of wine, her third, though she stopped counting, and stares at the family photo on the sideboard. It was taken 5 years ago at Daniel's college graduation. Marcus has his arm around her shoulders, Daniel grins with youthful optimism, and Margaret looks proud and powerful. Now Marcus is gone, probably forever. Daniel questions every gesture of affection as manipulation. And Margaret, who built an empire protecting the people she loves, wonders if her strength has become their prison. The bourbon burns her throat as she raises a toast to the empty room. To family, she whispers to no one, her voice echoing off walls that suddenly feel like a mausoleum of dreams. 3 weeks after the press conference, Victoria Sterling sits in a downtown Detroit law office, her Harvard MBA finally put to strategic use. Across from her, celebrity defense attorney Jonathan Blackwood leans back in his leather chair, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Margaret Whitmore made one crucial mistake, Blackwood says, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against legal documents. She destroyed you publicly before the criminal trial. That gives us ammunition to claim prejudicial treatment and corporate bullying. Victoria's eyes glitter with the same ambition that once charmed boardrooms and seduced Marcus Whitmore. I want her empire to burn, Jonathan. I want her to lose everything she thinks makes her untouchable. Then we don't just defend you, Blackwood replies, his voice smooth as silk. We go on the offensive. We make Margaret Whitmore the villain in her own story. By Thursday morning, the counterattack begins with surgical precision. The Detroit Free Press headlines scream in bold letters. Corporate queen or jealous tyrant? Inside Margaret Whitmore's revenge campaign. The article paints Victoria as a brilliant young woman destroyed by an aging CEO who couldn't bear to see someone younger and more beautiful close to her family. It questions the evidence, suggests planted phones, and hints at a desperate woman clinging to power. Margaret reads the article in her office, her coffee growing cold as each paragraph twists the narrative like a knife. The reporter, someone she's known for 15 years, has turned her maternal protection into corporate paranoia. Mrs. Whitmore, her communications director, enters nervously. The Today Show wants a response. So does CNN, Fox Business, and every major network. No interviews, Margaret says firmly. We let the evidence speak in court. But Victoria isn't waiting for court. That afternoon, she appears on Detroit's highest-rated talk show, tears glistening as she tells her story to sympathetic hosts. I loved working for Mrs. Whitmore, Victoria says, her voice breaking at precisely the right moments. She was like a mentor to me. But when I fell in love with Marcus, everything changed. She couldn't bear the thought of another woman in her son's life. The female host leans forward compassionately. And the phone with the alleged murder plot? Victoria's eyes flash with practiced vulnerability. I've never seen that phone before in my life. Think about it. If I were planning something so horrible, would I be careless enough to leave evidence behind? It's either planted or someone is framing me to protect the real culprit. The audience murmurs in sympathy, and Margaret realizes with growing dread that public opinion is shifting. Victoria is playing the victim card with masterful precision. The anonymous letter arrives on a Tuesday morning, slipped under the doors of every board member's office like poison seeping through cracks. Margaret finds a copy on her desk, the words typed on generic paper with no identifying marks. Fellow board members, it begins. We must address the elephant in the boardroom. Margaret Whitmore's recent actions suggest a CEO losing her mental faculties. Her paranoid accusations, her destruction of loyal employees, her increasingly erratic behavior, these are not the signs of stable leadership. The letter continues with surgical precision, questioning every decision Margaret has made in recent months. It suggests her age is catching up with her, that the stress of running a billion-dollar empire has finally broken her legendary composure. Perhaps it's time to consider whether Mrs. Whitmore's best days are behind her, and whether fresh leadership might better serve our shareholders and employees. Margaret crumples the letter, but she knows the damage is spreading through the company like wildfire. Someone is orchestrating this campaign, and she has a terrible suspicion about who. That evening, Marcus meets Victoria at a dim restaurant on Detroit's outskirts, away from cameras and corporate spies. She's thinner now, stress carving sharp angles in her face, but her eyes burn with undiminished ambition. The board is starting to question her. Victoria whispers across the candlelit table. 3 members have privately expressed concerns about Margaret's stability. Marcus stares into his whiskey, guilt and anger warring in his expression. I can't believe I'm sitting here planning my stepmother's downfall. She destroyed us first. Victoria's voice hardens. She made you choose between your family and your future. She painted me as a murderer on national television. Margaret Whitmore declared war. We're just fighting back. She reaches across the table, her fingers tracing his knuckles. You know she never saw your true potential. To her, you'll always be the stepson, always second to precious Daniel. But together, we can take what should have been yours from the beginning. Marcus looks up, and Victoria sees the moment his remaining loyalty finally crumbles. What do you need me to do? Use your shareholder votes. Call for a board review of Margaret's fitness to lead. Make them question whether a woman who sees assassination plots in every shadow should be running a public company. Victoria's smile is sharp enough to cut glass. Your mother thinks she won by destroying me publicly. But she forgot the first rule of warfare: never leave enemies alive to fight another day. Meanwhile, Margaret sits in her study at home, surrounded by legal briefs and corporate reports. The house feels impossibly quiet without the sounds of family life she once took for granted. Her phone buzzes with another resignation, her fourth senior executive this month, all citing personal reasons and new opportunities. But Margaret knows better. Fear is spreading through her company like a contagion. She opens her laptop and begins typing a memo to her security chief. If Victoria is orchestrating a campaign to destroy her reputation and steal her company, Margaret needs to know everything. Every meeting, every phone call, every whispered conversation. Find out who's feeding information to the media, she writes, and find out which board members are losing faith. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. But even as she types the words, Margaret feels the weight of isolation pressing down on her shoulders. She's fighting enemies on every front while her family fragments around her. For the first time in 30 years, Margaret Whitmore wonders if she's finally met a battle she might not win. The Wayne County Courthouse steps buzz with media frenzy as Margaret Whitmore emerges from her black sedan. 6 months after discovering Victoria's murder plot, the criminal trial has finally arrived. Camera crews jostle for position, tracking her every movement like predators circling prey. Margaret wears her signature black suit, the same one from her first hostile takeover 20 years ago. Today, it serves as armor for battle. Behind her, Daniel walks with quiet dignity, his presence a living reminder of what Victoria tried to destroy. Inside the courthouse, Victoria Sterling sits transformed at the defendant's table. Gone is the ambitious secretary. Today, she's dressed in soft pastels, her hair pulled back modestly, looking younger and more vulnerable. Her attorney has coached her well. Every gesture screams innocence betrayed. Judge Catherine Morrison calls court to order, her gavel echoing like a gunshot. The packed gallery holds reporters, business leaders, and citizens hungry for corporate drama. District Attorney James Walsh rises for his opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about ambition without conscience, about a young woman who decided murder was an acceptable path to power. He points at Victoria. The defendant conspired to poison Daniel Whitmore, not from hatred but cold calculation. She wanted to eliminate the heir, so she could manipulate his stepbrother into giving her control. Defense attorney Jonathan Blackwood counters with theatrical flair. This is a witch hunt by a powerful woman who couldn't bear her stepson finding love with someone younger. Margaret Whitmore destroyed my client's reputation, and now seeks to destroy her freedom based on planted evidence. Margaret's expression remains stone cold. She survived worse boardroom attacks. This is just another negotiation where her son's life hangs in the balance. Detective Sarah Chen takes the witness stand, methodically presenting evidence. Victoria's phone with fingerprints, text messages planning Daniel's murder, financial records showing payments to catering staff. Blackwood objects repeatedly, claiming evidence tampering. But Detective Chen's testimony builds an unassailable wall around Victoria's guilt. Then comes the moment Margaret has waited for, the testimony that will vindicate her or destroy everything. Tony Rodriguez, the bartender from that night, takes the stand. His hands shake as he's sworn in, guilt crushing his shoulders. This man almost murdered her son for money. Mr. Rodriguez, Prosecutor Walsh begins gently. Tell the court what happened. March 15th. Tony's voice barely whispers. Miss Sterling came to me during the party. Said she had a special surprise for one of the family members. What kind of surprise? She gave me a small bottle, told me to put drops in Daniel Whitmore's water when he wasn't looking. Said it was harmless, just to make him dizzy so she could take care of him. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Victoria's face goes pale as her lies unravel in real time. Did she pay you? Tony nods miserably. $5,000 cash. Said there'd be more if I kept quiet. Did you put the substance in his drink? No, sir. Something felt wrong. I needed the money bad, but when I saw how happy the young man looked with his family, Tony's voice breaks. I couldn't do it. I threw the bottle away. Margaret closes her eyes in profound relief. Whatever saved Daniel that night, luck or Tony's conscience, she's grateful beyond words. Blackwood attacks Tony's credibility during cross-examination, suggesting his testimony was bought. But the damage is done. The jury heard from the man Victoria tried to turn into a murderer. When Victoria takes the stand, she maintains innocence with theatrical desperation. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I loved Marcus, and Margaret was destroying our relationship out of jealousy. Under cross-examination, Walsh systematically destroys her story with phone records and witness testimony painting calculated ambition turned murderous. Miss Sterling, you testified you loved Marcus Whitmore. Yet these texts show you calling him useful but weak and easily manipulated. Is that love? Victoria stumbles, composure cracking. Those messages were taken out of context. What about this message? Once the little prince is gone, I'll have everything I want? What context makes attempted murder acceptable? Silence fills the courtroom as Victoria realizes her defense is collapsing. Her eyes find Marcus in the gallery, naked desperation replacing calculated charm. Marcus stares back with horror and dawning understanding. The woman he thought loved him saw him only as a stepping stone. The realization hits like a physical blow, tears streaming down his face. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, Victoria whispers. But you did mean for Daniel Whitmore to die, Walsh presses. You planned it, paid for it, and would have succeeded if the bartender hadn't developed a conscience. The jury deliberates 4 hours. When they return, their faces tell the story before the foreman speaks. On attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupts. Victoria collapses in her chair, finally understanding her ambition cost everything. Margaret feels Daniel's hand slip into hers, his grip strong and grateful. Judge Morrison's voice cuts through chaos. Victoria Sterling, you attempted to murder an innocent man for financial gain. This court sentences you to 25 years in state prison without parole for 15 years. Margaret's face remains composed, but inside, justice feels like cold satisfaction rather than warm victory. She's protected her family and empire, but the cost has been higher than imagined. As they exit the courthouse, Daniel squeezes her hand. Mom, I'm sorry for doubting you. Margaret looks at her son, alive, safe, finally understanding the lengths a mother will go to protect her child. Family first, Daniel. Always family first. The media swarms, but Margaret Whitmore walks through them untouched, a woman who faced her greatest battle and emerged victorious. 2 months after Victoria's sentencing, Whitmore Motors headquarters buzzes with renewed energy. The scandal that nearly destroyed the company has transformed into an unexpected catalyst for growth. Margaret stands before the executive conference table, watching Daniel review quarterly projections with the confidence of someone who's survived attempted murder and emerged stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret announces to the assembled board, effective immediately, Daniel Whitmore is promoted to Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. He will oversee all engineering divisions and lead our expansion into electric vehicle technology. The board applauds, some genuinely, others politically, but Margaret sees respect in their eyes that wasn't there 6 months ago. Daniel has proven himself not just as her son, but as a leader who can handle crisis with grace. Daniel stands, his voice steady and mature. Thank you for this opportunity. I won't let you down. His eyes find Margaret's across the room, and she sees the boy who once built model cars in her office, now ready to build the future of automotive innovation. That evening, Margaret works late in her office when her assistant announces an unexpected visitor. Her heart catches as Marcus enters, looking older than his 36 years. Prison orange has been replaced by a simple gray suit, but his eyes carry the weight of profound regret. Hello, Margaret. His voice cracks slightly on her name. They stare at each other across the expanse of her office. The woman who raised him and the man who betrayed her family. The silence stretches like a wound that's slowly learning to heal. Marcus. Margaret's voice is carefully neutral, but her hands tremble slightly as she sets down her pen. I know I have no right to be here, he begins, his composure fracturing. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I needed to tell you something before I leave Detroit forever. Margaret waits, her executive training warring with maternal instincts she thought were dead. Victoria played me like a fool, but that doesn't excuse what I became. I let jealousy and ambition poison everything you taught me about family and honor. Tears flow freely down his face now. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so damn sorry for betraying you and nearly getting Daniel killed. The word mom breaks something inside Margaret that she's kept locked away for months. Despite everything, the conspiracy, the betrayal, the attempted murder, this broken man was once the little boy she tucked into bed and helped with homework. She rises slowly, crossing the office until she stands before him. For a moment that feels like eternity, they simply look at each other. Then Margaret reaches out and pulls Marcus into an embrace that speaks of forgiveness and family bonds that refuse to break completely. You're still my son, she whispers against his shoulder. You made terrible choices, but you're still family. Marcus collapses into her arms, sobbing like the child he once was. I love you, Mom. I never stopped loving you, even when I was destroying everything. The following week, Margaret calls another press conference, but this one radiates confidence rather than crisis management. The same reporters who 6 months ago questioned her sanity now hang on her every word. Ladies and gentlemen, Whitmore Motors is announcing a $2 billion investment in artificial intelligence and advanced security systems. The events that threatened our family have inspired innovations that will protect corporate leaders and their families worldwide. The announcement sends Whitmore stocks soaring 15% in a single day. Margaret has turned near destruction into unprecedented growth, proving once again why she's considered Detroit's most formidable business leader. Forbes runs a cover story, calling her the Iron Lady of Detroit, how Margaret Whitmore turned assassination into innovation. The article details how she used the attempt on Daniel's life to develop cutting-edge security technology that corporations globally are now desperate to purchase. Business Weekly declares her CEO of the year, writing, Margaret Whitmore didn't just survive a corporate assassination plot, she weaponized it into billion-dollar growth. 3 months later, Margaret stands in her office as evening paints Detroit's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. The city that raised her, challenged her, and forged her into the woman she became spreads before her like a kingdom finally at peace. Daniel's laughter echoes from the conference room where he's leading a product development meeting. His voice carries the authority of someone who knows he's earned his position through fire and blood rather than nepotism. Marcus sends letters from Seattle, where he started over with a small consulting firm. His words carry genuine remorse and slow healing, the beginning of redemption that may take years to complete. Margaret pours herself a glass of Bordeaux, not the bourbon of warfare, but the wine of reflection. The liquid catches the dying light like liquid rubies as she raises it in a silent toast to survival. Power doesn't save you from loneliness, she whispers to the empty office, her voice carrying hard-won wisdom. But it gives you a choice, to protect or to destroy. And I chose to protect. The words hang in the air like a prayer or a promise. Outside, Detroit continues its eternal rhythm of ambition and struggle, while inside her glass tower, Margaret Whitmore contemplates the price of building an empire and the greater cost of protecting the people you love. She thinks of Victoria, serving 25 years for letting greed consume conscience. She thinks of the bartender whose moment of humanity saved her son's life. Most of all, she thinks of family, broken, mended, stronger for having survived the ultimate test. The wine tastes like victory and sorrow mixed in equal measure. Margaret Whitmore has won her greatest battle, but she knows the war between ambition and humanity never truly ends. As darkness falls over Detroit, the last light in Whitmore Motors headquarters burns on, a beacon of power wielded with purpose, of an empire built not just on profit, but on the unshakable foundation of protecting family at any cost.